Hey guys, Tom here again from SynthHacker.com. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make this Kaytranada inspired detuned saw synth using Serum with no external effects. So these type of detuned saw chords are all over Kaytranada's productions, especially on tracks from 99.9% like Weight Off, One Too Many, and Glowed Up. But what characteristics really tie all these chord sounds together? Firstly, we want some width with the sound feeling like it's pushed out to the left and right. Secondly, we want it to have a kind of detuned wobbly feel. Third, we also want a way to remove or at least control the low mid body of the sound to make room for other elements. And finally, we want to add some polish with some effects that Kaytranada typically likes to use. We are of course going to be making the preset from scratch. Just in case you're interested in the MIDI for this one, I'll quickly go over the chords I wrote in Scalar 2. You can see the notes at the top. Worth mentioning is that although I wrote these chords myself, they actually sound remarkably close to Kaytranada's track What You Need, so that might have been a subconscious reference there. So let's start by setting up two oscillators with the digital saw wavetable hyper before panning them left and right. Now, because both of these oscillators are still identical, right now the left and right sum to create a mono stereo image. To get the wider stereo image we're after, we can offset the fine-tune of our oscillators. This difference in pitch creates a perceivable difference between the left and right saws, resulting in a wider sound. Let's also just quickly soften the attack and bring our sustain down to about halfway. Now, if you've watched many of my previous videos, you'll know by now that whenever I'm after a detuned analog sound, I like to make use of Serum's chaos oscillators, usually modulating the master tune. I did, however, learn something quite interesting recently, specifically about the Chaos Oscillator's mono switch. By default, the mono button is off, meaning that the Chaos Oscillator affects each note of our chord differently, resulting in a kind of analog style pitch drift. This is noticeable if we increase the modulation amount and play just two notes. Listen to how both of them fluctuate in pitch independent of one another. If, however, we turn on mono, all of our notes will change pitch parallel with one another, resulting instead in a more tape-style pitch drift where everything moves together. For now, we're going to keep mono off and keep our per voice drift, but it's definitely worth experimenting with this, maybe even bringing in the second chaos oscillator and combining both techniques. So as I mentioned earlier, one characteristic of Kaytranada's chord sounds is that a lot of the time they seem to lack low mid frequencies, usually floating above the rest of the arrangement. Now, an obvious approach to this might be to simply use a high pass EQ. However, another approach would be to play around with Serum's warp modes. If we select the bend minus warp mode for both oscillators and set up a macro to dial these in, we can alter the tone of the sound as a whole with one simple parameter. The effect that this has will obviously change based on the waveform and warp mode, but in this case with our saw waves, it really allows you to dial in the amount of low mid body you want in the sound. Now, there's a couple of effects I hear Kaytranada use a lot on chord sounds in his tracks, firstly being flanges. We're going to use Serum's own for this sound, also setting up a decaying envelope to create more of an effect the longer the sound is sustained. Another effect Kaytranada uses all the time on this type of sound is chorus, often to create a variation or different version of the chords in different sections of the track. Finally, we can use a combination of EQ and filtering to give ourselves lots of control over the high end. So there we have it. Hopefully you found this video inspiring for creating your own chord sounds. As always, the best way to support these videos is to check out my preset packs over at synthhacker.com and get your hands on some high quality sounds to use in your tracks. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.